other reserve. There's only a fraction of their band members that are actually living on the reserve.
Yeah.
And for many of us, our goal isn't to go back to our reserve.
No.
Our goal is just to live healthy within our own communities, right?
Yeah.
So there's some systems change that's slow and incremental, but that Bill C-92, I think, is one of those pieces of legislation that'll really, guide, First Nations communities in taking control of the future of their children and what happens to them when that's at risk. So that's the kind of change that's starting to happen, Trent. But I think more on the individual change, there's more stories like mine, and so that's, that change. We don't need government to change for us to change. Right.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if we're able to acknowledge that and step into that and own it, then I think the healing can start, because I'm not going to heal because of truth and reconciliation. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna heal because of my own choices in how I acknowledge my own trauma and how I move forward through that trauma. And it's not like trauma is going to completely disappear. I'm just going to learn how to deal with it, how to acknowledge it, and how to live with it. Trauma never goes away. And I'll share a story with you guys that's really heavy for me. But I'll share it with you because I know it's going to serve me in dealing with that ongoing trauma. Because of the sexual abuse that I was exposed to as a young boy, and because of the sexual abuse I seen as a young boy, it had an impact on me, right? And I remember when I became a dad. I mean, proudest moment, right? Looking at my little girl, but all of a sudden it hit, I'm responsible for this little one. It's, I'm the primary caregiver. I need to protect her and keep her safe. And in my mind, it's like all those things that happened to me, that's not going to happen to my little girl. Nobody's going to touch my little girl. I'm going to protect her and keep her safe. And, so that's the way I was thinking. But then, the trauma creeps in. That trauma that you're exposed to, it rears its ugly head. And we don't often understand how it's going to rear its head. But it reared its head with me in my dreams. And I would have nightmares. And these nightmares that I would have, and I haven't told anybody about these nightmares except my wife. And so you guys are hearing it, and I'm sharing it for the first time, openly. I would have nightmares that I was sexually abusing my daughter. And I thought, I've said that a few times, and I thought I was, I am moving through this and forward with this, but it's still heavy. You see how heavy it is, right? Mm. That trauma, it doesn't go away. You just learn to live with it. But those nightmares were so real. I'd wake up in cold sweats, and I'd go run to my girl's room and make sure she was okay. But that's intergenerational trauma. That's trauma, right? And so, our culture plays a role in helping us navigate that and helping us manage it in a way that's both spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. So that's the value of our culture. And that's why I'm a strong advocate for our culture. That's why people, they say they call me the CEO of an organization, but I don't actually like that title. I refer to myself as the lead Escopios. And Escopios, as many of you know, is the helper of elders, the helper of ceremonies. And so that's what Maskanawa is, right? Maskanawa is a mushroom. It has Ushpagan. It has its own traditional songs. And so, I'm a helper of that. I'm a lead Escopios of that. And so, tomorrow morning I'm going in the lodge like I do every Friday, because as a lead Scopules of Indigenous organization, that's important. People say, "Oh, you get to sit in a sweat lodge every Friday." Oh, that sounds like a vacation and a holiday. And for me at this stage of my life, it kind of is. But I've earned that, and that's an important part of who I am as a man. And I think it's important for somebody who's leading an Indigenous organization to kind of walk that way of life. It doesn't mean that I'm some sort of saint or anything. I'm still a man. I still say stupid shit.
You're extra holy, bro.
I still fall on my face and make mistakes, but I'm able to find ways to find correction and guidance, and so I love the life that I have now. It's not easy. I have a life partner upstairs, and we still have our squabbles and our differences, because we're human, right? We make mistakes, but the culture is something that still grounds me. It serves so many purposes for me in my life, and like I said, it saved me, and it's. So tomorrow when I sit in the lodge, I'll think about my girl, and I'll think about my nightmares, which I haven't had in years, but it's when I still say that word, and acknowledge those nightmares, it's still heavy, right? Because that's how important that little one is to me, who's now 27 years old. But
I think it's important that you shared that, like, to show, not only vulnerability, but that you have struggled with mental health, as I have. I struggle with anxiety and depression, and that's what we want to talk about openly with people, and let men know that it's okay to talk about these things, right?
That's it. Like, thank you so much, Kirby, for sharing your your story, your testimony here, because I think a lot of men can find answers through your stories. And that's why we created this podcast, was to have a safe space for men to be able to connect. And that kind of leads me into my next couple of questions for you. Growing up, in through your journey, how important do you think it is for men to have programs, to be able to have safe spaces to, communicate like this and talk about their feelings and really find a way to heal? And then the second question that I have is, do you think that it's time for every major city across Turtle Island to have a safe space for Indigenous people to pray, inside the city limits, not outside on our land, but right inside of our cities, where we can have sweats and those type of things, and also even funerals and kind of like a community center for people who can't make it out to to the reserves, and a lot of times there's a lot of people that come from other places that have built a community where it would be nice to celebrate their life inside that city if there was a space for that. So two of those questions.
Yeah, no, great questions, and I appreciate that, Kurt. I think the first one, and about men having those spaces, I think that's been again a Western practice that's been imposed and adopted by a lot of Indigenous people and agencies. Is that a lot? If you look at all of the programs that are out there, probably 99% of them are kind of geared towards the mother and the child, right? And that's that's a Western worldview, right?